Should hate speech be punished by the government? That's the topic of today's video on The Reason We Learn. I'm Deb Philman, mom, homeschooler, educator. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time, I hope you'll consider subscribing and like this video, comment on this video, share this video. I definitely want to hear from you and get your thoughts on this topic because it's a hot button topic, not just in general in our country, but this week in particular, free speech. It's trending. So, this is based on a survey. This is Campus Reform, and this is based on a survey done recently that found that 63% of students believe hate speech should be punished by the government. Now, I want to lead into this right away by saying I have a problem with the term hate speech itself. I really do. I think we have freedom of speech. We have the First Amendment to protect unpopular speech. I think you don't need protection to say things everyone wants to hear. I also think the minute you use a subjective term like hate speech, and it is subjective, and you give government the power to define what that means, you open Pandora's box. Whoever happens to be in power with the authority to add to that definition, change that definition, expand that definition, etc., can and likely will include things you personally want to say. So even if right now you want to make it so no one can say hurtful things and no one can hurt your feelings, no one can say even, I think Adolf Hitler's a great guy. Please don't take that out of context. I certainly don't. Okay. I'm just using it as an example because one of the things people ask kids all the time is, do you think you should be able to have Nazi symbols, or do you think you should be able to praise a monster like Hitler? Or Mao or Stalin or Che Guevara for that matter. I know plenty of students who wear Che Guevara t-shirts and probably don't consider that to be hate speech. But if you are a Cuban immigrant, to you, it might be hate speech to see somebody wearing a Che Guevara t-shirt. Let's say he executed half of your family. Okay. So it really will depend on who it is. And if somebody gets into power and says that thing that you say, I don't like, it's hate speech. They might decide that you criticizing them is hate speech. That's inconvenient, isn't it? Since part of the reason we have the First Amendment is so that we can criticize our government. That is a big part of it, because when the founders were creating these amendments, the Bill of Rights, which they added to the Constitution, they had recently gotten rid of a king that would have made it sedition or treason or whatever, just to say anything negative about him publicly. So, and certainly if you're a public figure, can't do that in print or out loud. That's kind of the definition of tyranny. If you can't criticize your own government, you can't change your government, can you? So I have a big problem with the term hate speech in and of itself. I grew up in a world where we were taught sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. I feel that way to this day. There are people who say really nasty things to me because I spend more than 2 minutes at a time on social media, and it happens because I disagree with people and they don't like it and they call me all kinds of names. And you know what? Oh, well. And people might say, yeah, but what if they try to come to your house, or what if they do? Well, there are laws against that. There are laws against harassment. There are laws against making threats, making a death threat specifically. Now you're talking about, that's not hate speech. You're threatening violence. Okay, that's specifically saying I have this intention to harm you, which is part of harassment. That's not hate speech. Hate speech is what people commonly understand as, saying something mean. And you'll see in this video that I'm about to show you, and I will stop periodically to make comments, but that there are college students. That means they were educated all the way through 12th grade, and they've arrived at the conclusions they currently have that they will show you that they have in this video based on all the education they've had to date. So let's take a look at what some college students think about this topic, because this video is about two things. It's about, should we punish hate speech? And it's also about, actually more to the point, it's about how we're educating people about their rights and what college students think about their rights, because I'm all about education, and I'm seeing in this video that we have some very poorly educated students in colleges in America right now. And if you can get 63% of them, or nearly 70%, to say, you shouldn't have to deal with speech you don't like, you disagree with, that's a problem. I think it's a very big problem for all of us. So let's take a look at this video.
Beauty of that freedom.
Oh, I have to start at the beginning. Let's go back, shall we? Okay, this is campus reform.
Hi, I'm Ophelia Jacobson with Campus Reform. A member of the Biden transition team recently came out and said that America needs a hate speech law and that it isn't protected under the First Amendment. We're asking students at the University of Florida what they think of this and if they would be okay if their college enacted a hate speech law on their campus.
So she's on a college campus and she's asking because this is campus reform and they want to know what's going on college campuses, and I understand that, that's their purpose. And of course, mine is about education leading up to college, because they wouldn't be there with these opinions if they didn't get them in their, elementary, middle, and high school education, or, from their parents who got it from similar education and so forth. But it's important to know what she said there, that you have people in government right now who are saying we need a hate speech law. They want to do this. And whether they are able to or not will depend upon the support they get from voters. These are college students, presumably over 18. That means they vote. So it's not just about what they think. It's about what they're likely to do about what they think, which will affect all of us.
Let's find out. What would you define as hate speech?
I guess like any speech that's like directed at like anyone that's like either like derogatory or like hateful, I guess.
That's like derogatory or like hateful. I don't mean to make fun of her. I mean, she's put on the spot. Derogatory. I don't think you're very nice. I don't like you. And I think your opinions are shallow and pedantic. That's derogatory. Is it hateful? I don't know. Maybe she thinks so. What if I say, I really can't stand people who go to school in Florida. I just can't stand. I hate them. I hate them. I hate Florida. I hate people who live in Florida. Now, it's stupid. Why would I say that, right? I mean, I wouldn't say that, but maybe somebody would. Is that hateful? I literally said hate. Is that going to hurt her? Is it hurting her that I said that? It's derogatory. I guess it's hateful. I even used the word hate, but who's hurt now? Is someone hurt? Are we hurt? Nothing happened.
Yes. Words that are directed towards people that are like not nice.
Words that are directed at people that are like not nice. As I just said, I grew up with sticks and stones may break my bones, but names can never hurt me. Words that are directed at people that are not nice. Think of all the possibilities. Who defines what's not nice? Who defines that? And what's hilarious to me is how many people who think as she does will be on social media saying the most nasty things about people with whom they disagree, hiding behind a screen. I don't know that they really have thought about the fact that a hate speech law today might be in the hands of someone they agree with who might not enforce it against them if it's as subjective as not nice words. But let's say power shifts to somebody who disagrees with them. And now they're the ones saying not nice words. And they've gotten away with it for years because they thought, oh, well, the not nice words are these 10 words directed at these 10 kinds of people. And I'm in the clear. I can say all this other stuff to them because I'm in the good group. And they're, that's what we're dealing with right now. What's not nice and what is nice. The names that I've been called, the hate that's been thrown my way. And I will even report it on social media because it's a violation of terms of service and nothing happens. But if I say even the smallest thing, then I get shadow banned or something bad happens to me. And it's a private company, so that's fine. They can do what they want, I guess. But we're talking about government. They want think about what they're saying. Not nice words directed at people.
Probably like racial slurs or insults against minorities or even non-minorities.
You mean like cracker? Like cracker? Like that would be bad? Because I think that would be bad. I think that's a racial slur. Last time I checked, yeah.
Anything that like goes against people's like intrinsic beliefs of who they are, like whether it be race or gender or something like that, like something that they truly believe is defining them.
You mean like being Christian or being a Jew or being a Muslim or being a cisgendered man, heterosexual? You mean like that? like being a husband or a wife. But how about being a woman? How about being a biological woman and wanting to describe yourself as a woman? How about that? If that's something you believe that you are, and somebody says, no, you're a person, you're a person who has a womb. You're a birthing person. You're a whatever, vagina owner, whatever they're calling it now. But no, I'm a woman. I believe very, very much that I'm a woman. That's who I am. Okay. Like that. So if somebody says that I don't get to call myself a woman, or I shouldn't call somebody else a woman, then that's what? Am I the one engaging in hate speech because of what somebody else thinks they are? Or are they engaging in hate speech against me because I genuinely believe that I'm a woman? How about neither?
If they feel hated upon, I would characterize that as hate speech.
If they feel hated upon. So now we make laws and we make rules and we punish people based on how someone else felt about what happened in the United States of America. They were educated, folks. Okay, these were college students. That means they made it through college, they graduated, or they made it through high school, they graduated high school, they took SATs or ACTs or whatever, and they did well enough to matriculate at University of Florida to study who knows what. But now it's about hurty feelings. Now it's about hurty feelings. My feelings are hurt, therefore somebody needs to be punished. Think about the implications of that.
Do you think hate speech is protected under the First Amendment?
I actually don't know too much information about that to make that judgment, I feel like.
So
Now, props to her that she at least admits that she doesn't know enough to make that judgment. That is vastly superior to expressing an opinion when you don't know what you're talking about. Okay. And I would rather everybody did that than say some of the things that have been said so far in this video. That said, how sad. How sad for her. She lives in what is supposed to be the freest country on earth. She lives in a republic with a constitution and a Bill of Rights where the freedom of speech is like the North Star, or was described that way even by our own Supreme Court. Time and time again. So important. Without it, we can't have most of the rights that we have. So she doesn't know. If we are graduating seniors and sending them off to college and they don't feel comfortable defending their right to free speech, how are they going to do well in college? How are they going to get the most out of college? Because you see, in order to succeed in college, in order to get a lot out of it, you need to be able to have free speech and understand what that means. Your professors need to have it too. Your fellow students need to have it too. And you need to be in a position to defend it, ideally with words. Let's try words. Let's not have to defend it using our fists or any other means. But she doesn't know enough to comment. So kudos for not speaking when you don't know what you're talking about. How very sad and how very frustrating to me as an educator that she can't answer this question.
First Amendment, obviously freedom of speech. Do you feel as if hate speech is protected under that?
I feel like sadly it kind of is.
I think that's a gray area right now because I personally don't know how to define it because I'm not super educated on this matter, but
We are a college student. I'm not super educated on this matter. Whoever you are out there who educated this young man in high school, shame on you. Shame on you. We should not be sending anybody to college, least of all where they're likely borrowing money to pay for it when they can't defend their own rights. That's fundamental. That's fundamental. Whatever else we taught them, whether it was math, science, literature, computer programming, whatever it is, they're not going to be able to pursue any of these dreams, any of these goals for very long if they don't know their rights and they can't defend them. That's fundamental. That's just fundamental. That is, if not the sole purpose of education, it certainly is the number one most important purpose of education in a republic, in a free country, is know your rights and be able to defend them without using your fists. If you get to that point, then, forget about it.
I think that freedom of speech includes every kind of speech, but at the same time, if the particular type of speech incites violence, then that's a problem.
If the particular type of speech incites violence, then that's a problem. Now, this is where we are kind of this week in America. If it incites violence, well, Define incitement. Define incitement. If the particular speech incites violence. Now, in some cases, you can say, well, it's crystal clear. When somebody says, meet me at the corner of, Fifth Avenue and 32nd Street so we can bust some heads, and I'm bringing the clubs, will you bring the Molotov cocktails, whatever. Okay, and they say that publicly, and they say, everybody meet me there, bring weapons. I think it's safe to say you're inciting. Okay, I think that's pretty clear. But if you say, let's go fight for our rights, let's march and fight and, protest and tell them they can't do this and that and the other to us, whatever, let's fight. Well, I mean, you could be talking about cheerleaders for crying out loud. Fight, fight, fight. Okay. Do they literally mean let's go fight? Or do they mean let's verbally fight? Let's show, force in numbers. Let's raise our voices. Let's sing. Let's chant. Let's protest. Let's hold up signs. It is a gray area. He's right. So if the speech incites violence, but now we get down to well, who gets to decide what incitement is? Is it based on the results, or is it based on an objective definition of what the person speaking had to have said or done or reasonably expected would happen before the outcome? Okay. So or in the case that we have this week with the president, what position do they hold? What kind of responsibility do they have to de-escalate situations, if any? Is it implied? Is it explicit, et cetera? So incitement is one of those weird gray areas that we're debating now in this country. But I would admit it's a gray area, but I would be very careful to act like we know exactly what incitement is objectively in all situations. And I think it would be, it's risky to say that that's hate speech. Okay. It is risky to say that that's hate speech. Again, you heard why I have a problem with hate speech.
I mean, I think freedom of speech, you're allowed to express any opinions. I think that's the beauty of that freedom. And as much as I don't support any form of hate speech, I think that you as an American have the right to be able to say what you believe in.
Yay! That's kind of where I'm at. There are people who are going to say things I think are crazy, I think are horrible, I think are hateful and evil and all kinds of things. But you know what? I'd rather they said them in the light of day and out there in the open where I might have a chance or someone else might have a chance to challenge them and know what they're thinking and persuade them to think differently about it. That's how we do it. You see, transparency. The problem is you can outlaw all kinds of things, but you can't really outlaw thoughts. You really can't. I mean, you could try. But what happens is people go underground with these things. They go dark, they go quiet, they go meet in private basements and rooms and so forth and have these conversations. And sometimes it makes the problem worse because people create echo chambers for themselves where nobody disagrees with them because they're afraid if I'm around people who disagree with me, they will punish me. They'll call this hate speech and they'll punish me. So now they're left to marinate in whatever those ideas are and only have speech back and forth with people who agree with them, and nobody's ever going to challenge them, and vice versa. The people who aren't challenging them think everybody agrees with me and it's wonderful and fabulous. And then suddenly the Ewoks come out from underground. Well, if you've read H.G. Wells, you know what I'm talking about.
I mean, I feel like technically it is, or at least that's what a lot of people use as their kind of grounds for it being allowed.
It is protected because obviously you're free to say what you want, but something is just turns out being more harmful. So a member of the Biden transition team said that they wanted to enact a hate speech law in America and that hate speech wasn't actually protected under the First Amendment. Do you agree with this?
I think it gets tricky defining what hate speech is, what a certain person would think it is.
Do you think we should have a hate speech law?
Probably. I mean, if the First Amendment doesn't cover it, then definitely.
If the First Amendment doesn't cover it. Here's what's sad about that. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights limit the power of government. They don't limit what you can say and do. The Constitution is not a list of permissions for you. It's a list of restrictions on the government. By definition, you have freedom of speech. And all it does is affirm that you do. There's nothing in the Constitution that limits your speech other than, I don't even think incitement is in there specifically. It might be for lawmakers, but for us, it's freedom of speech. The rest are covered by local criminal statutes, things like that. And they had to be very careful when they wrote them because they can't violate the First Amendment. So things like you can't scream fire in a crowded theater. Obviously you can if the theater's on fire. Okay. So, it will be criminal endangerment if you do it and there's no fire. But if there is a fire, you're actually a hero because you're getting people out of there. So that would be covered under local statutes, but it's not to do with the Constitution. So I don't know where she went to school, but that's kind of scary that she feels like that.
Yeah, I think, sure. Yeah.
Yep, sure. We went back on our earlier opinion. Yeah, sure. We should have a hate speech law. Yes, you have the right to say it, and it might be harmful, but yeah, we should have a law. So she understands why we have freedom of speech, but she's still, in the end, can't resist. We got to have a law.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so too.
Do you think our country needs a law like this?
Biden coming out with that would definitely be like beneficial with kind of like setting a boundary and saying like, this is what we will like protect and won't protect.
Really, this is what we will protect and won't protect. Again, that's not what the purpose of the Constitution is. That's just not what it is. It's not a limit on you. It's a limit on what the government can punish. It's a limit on what they can punish. And it very clearly says they can't. This is really scary to me because, again, this indicates a total failure on the part of the civics educators.
Who would actually be in charge of figuring out what is and isn't hate speech then?
I don't.
And now I don't really know.
That's so hard. Okay. His team, I'm guessing.
His team, the elected partisan president of the United States, and his team. I wonder if you asked her the same question if the current president, who soon won't be president anymore, but if the current president were the one deciding what you may and may not say and defining what hate speech would be. I mean, look, he said quite correctly, in my opinion, he signed an executive order that you could not teach critical race theory using federal tax dollars. And the entire statement that he made was based on the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which talks about prohibiting discrimination of anyone. So it's the anti-hate speech law. Really? It's just reaffirming the Civil Rights Act and your freedom of speech, meaning you have freedom of speech if you are not a minority to say, I am not racist, even if somebody is busily telling you that you are, and that you're not going to have tax money used to tell you things or to restrict your speech or force speech out of you, because part of freedom of speech is you cannot be compelled to speak either. And critical race theory trainings do that. They compel you to say things that go against your best interests and against your actual beliefs. You have to almost profess things that you don't agree with, like that poor student in Nevada. So his team, they don't want the reaffirmation of freedom that President Trump signed. That's already pretty much been rescinded, even though the incoming administration's not there yet. And now we want to let the incoming administration just decide what you may not say.
A recent Gallup survey actually showed that a majority of college students would be okay with their colleges creating hate speech laws and kind of prohibiting hate speech on campus. What do you guys think of this? Should colleges have that role?
I think it would be good. I think it'd be helpful.
Yeah, it would definitely help like in campus life.
I wish this interviewer had asked for examples. So this is an interesting interview, but if she'd asked for examples, like give me an example where it would be helpful. Maybe she does coming up because I haven't watched this all the way through. But that's what's missing here. Putting these people back on the spot and saying, okay, so you want your own speech limited. You want your own speech limited. All right, super.
I think so, just because colleges have such a big role on, raising the next generation and stuff like that.
Raising the next generation. Can we talk about who raised you? Who educated you, Miss? Well, if you feel hated, then your speech, then other people's speech should be limited because of how you feel. And colleges have such a big role. No, actually, that's not their role. The role of college is not to raise the next generation. You should be raised. You're an adult. The role of college is to credential you to go out in the world and do something ideally productive for yourself, if not for society. It is not to raise you. You're an adult. And if you don't already know what your rights are, it might be a bit late, but it's definitely not the role of the college to shape you or mold you or indoctrinate you. No, it is not. It is not. You should already have your values and, understand your rights before you arrive on the college campus. Again, if you want to make rules, and if it's a private college, it's University of Florida. This is a state school. So no, they may not limit your speech. I'm sorry, they may not. That is a civil rights violation. But if you want to go to a private college where they have strict speech codes and you can't say boo to somebody who's harassing you or whatever, even when you're super frustrated without worrying about being thrown out of the school and having your future ruined, that's your decision, hun. But no, you don't get to decide that for other people.
If you are on a college campus, there should be some restrictions to what you can say and can't say in order to benefit the college community.
No, there shouldn't. No, there shouldn't. There shouldn't be restrictions on what you can and cannot say to benefit the college community. What there should be is protection of individual rights. And if somebody says something to you that's nasty and it's a one-off, move on with your life. Move on with your life. If anything, colleges should be militant about that, trying to help these people move on with life and go out into the world and be a little more thick-skinned than needing the college to restrict other people's speech to their face, because they'll just go say things behind your back or go into social media. They're not going to not say it. They'll just hide. They'll find more clever ways to hide. Now, if you're talking about harassment, again, there are already criminal statutes and civil statutes that can deal with harassment. And harassment doesn't even have to be hate speech. Somebody can just be following you around going, you're beautiful, I love you, you're beautiful. They're not being hateful, but it's still creepy as anything, isn't it? Okay, so how about we restrict behavior? How about we restrict things that actually threaten you? But one person calling you a slur or making a nasty remark, that shouldn't suddenly, trigger a whole bunch of things happening.
I would have to see the whole, I'd have to see the whole plan about how they would enact that. But if it meant people felt safer, then yeah.
Hate speech.
If it meant that people felt safer, there's no end to that. There's no end to that. Again, with the feels. If we make restrictions on individuals based on how someone else is going to feel, people will keep getting more and more and more sensitive. There'll be no end to it. Somebody's go, well, I feel threatened by the fact that you tend to wear black all the time. I think that is just like what people who go to protest rallies wear. Antifas kind of scare me, and you're wearing black head to toe. So I think we should just ban goth. We should ban goth. It's too close to Antifa. It scares me because they riot and beat people up, and I'm scared and I don't feel safe. So we got to ban black clothing. I mean, that's extreme and crazy sounding. But if I'd asked you 5 years ago if you thought that college students would be saying, yeah, I think, based on if somebody's scared, we should limit free speech, you would have thought I was crazy.
Speech isn't good for anyone in general, and
No, it's neither good nor bad. It's words. It's words. There's a big difference between just somebody hurling an insult at you and abuse or harassment. I guarantee you in the college classrooms on this campus, there's more verbal abuse going on that will never be classified as hate speech, critical race theory based training, anti-racism based training, anything that's saying white people are all, people of color are all fill in the blank, whatever. That is abusive. Telling someone, well, you're just denying that you're racist because you're really racist and you're just, if you're fragile, that's verbal abuse. That should be outlawed on a college campus. You shouldn't be able to verbally abuse someone and try to manipulate them and not allow them to speak or think for themselves, because that's literally what they're there to do. That's abusive. Simply calling somebody a name, no, it doesn't hurt people. It shouldn't hurt people.
especially on the college campuses, there's bunch of different organizations and groups of people, and having people kind of using their words to attack some groups of people wouldn't make the people on the college campus feel safe and secure in a place.
So again, if we're talking about a pattern of behavior where a group of people are hurling insults at another group of people, you're now talking about harassment. This is not hate speech. They could be just yelling, go home, go home, go home, go home. Are we going to make the words go home hate speech? In what context? They're not really thinking. And this is my problem. We're not teaching people to think. We're not teaching them to answer questions like this with it depends. Or no, simply no. Simply no. I don't think there is such a thing as hate speech. I don't think if we're talking just about speech that we need a new law. I think we need to enforce harassment laws. We need to enforce anything about verbal abuse that might be on the campus. We need to enforce freedom of speech or protect freedom of speech rigorously so that the person who feels like they are being treated poorly can speak up on their own behalf without fear of reprisal or harassment in return. So that's the irony to me, is that most of the people advocating here for free speech laws may, without realizing it, be part of groups who are making other people feel very unsafe on campus. But they're not looking at it from their own point of view. They're thinking about themselves as the victims.
Place that they would call home.
Yes, they want to feel like it's a place they can call home. Well, I hate to break it to you, but it's not your home. It's a step, it's 1 foot into the real world. It should be both feet in the real world because you're an adult now. And no, it is not the job of the college to protect every feeling that you might have. I would suggest, even if you need them to do that, then perhaps college isn't for you. And certainly perhaps the real world isn't for you, and you should just go home and make sure mommy doesn't allow anybody to say anything mean to you. And I hate to be so judgmental and negative, but it really bothers me. And I do think there comes a point where once you are an adult, it's now your responsibility. If you didn't learn something, somebody's going to stand there and say, I don't know enough about it. Stop there. Just stop there. To her credit, she said that, but then she kept going. If you're going to be the kind of person who wants a restriction or a law placed on someone else, you need to be put in the position before that happens of having it done to you first. And then let's see how you feel. And I really do wish the interviewer had done that, had said, well, let's look at an example. Let's say, who's somebody that you like? Do you like Joe Biden? Whatever. Okay. Now imagine it's somebody else who comes into office who's the opposite of him and says that it's hate speech to wear a t-shirt that has Joe Biden on it because it makes other people feel uncomfortable. Makes other people feel unsafe. How do you feel? That's hate speech. They just redefined it on the fly because it's their team. They can do what they want. How do you feel? I guarantee you, let's say, no, well, that's different. That's not okay. Well, there you go. See, that's what first principles are about. If it doesn't apply across the board, if you don't want to live under that law, if you presume it won't affect you, it's already wrong. It's already wrong. That's how you should know that it's wrong, is if you feel like it won't affect you. I've got nothing to hide. The people say, well, the surveillance state doesn't bother me. I've got nothing to hide. If you feel like you have to say that, it's already wrong. It's already wrong. You don't know that. This kind of power in the hands of government to limit your speech or tell you what hate speech is endless. It's endless. Whatever they decide, disagreeing with the government is hate speech. That's already happening. We're seeing it happen this week. Criticize too much, criticize in a certain way, and we are now moving the goalpost on even what incitement is. And now we have 63% of students at one school. Now, ironically, it wasn't at this school. This is University of Florida. The survey itself was done at UW-Madison. And I'll link to this in the description. You can read the methodology. It was over 500 students were asked about it. It's really disturbing. I could go through all of this as well, but I wanted to show you that video with my commentary because I think it's more compelling to hear them speak and then respond. As I said, I wish I were the interviewer. I would have asked some different questions, but here we are. If you like this content or find it useful, I hope you will subscribe to the channel, comment on this video, share this video, like this video, and that's the video.